Hi, everyone. It's Mama Deb from Let's Get Real About Mental Health. Thank you so much, HR. I appreciate you coming in to support me. Before we start on today's topic, which is abandonment issues, I really have to put a disclaimer up. I have had I had a really great weekend because I got to meet some of my people from my online group, which was amazing. I spent like, I think 6 or 7 hours with them, just hanging out, talking, doing all that stuff. But I also have had a very traumatic weekend in the fact that I've had a neighbor that I actually had to take out a trespass order against, and I'm considering a restraining order against. So, you guys, please don't mind me if I burst into tears or I start crying. It's because I'm dealing with a whole lot emotionally. The incident is putting me back in a place where I don't want to ever be again, and here I am back in it. I'm just trying to deal with it. So, all right, so let's get into it. Abandonment issues. I think we all have them in some way, excuse me, some way, shape, or form. We have abandonment issues. And abandonment issues it's not a mental illness, okay? It's not something that you're born with. It's something that you develop most of the time in your childhood because you're having this person who's supposed to meet your emotional needs and your physical needs. They are not they are not meeting they did not meet those needs for you. For me, for example, is that my mother did not meet my emotional, physical, or any of the needs that I didn't feel protected any of that. So when I'm dealing with my talking about abandonment issues, I have them. But what we have to understand is that most of the time they do develop in childhood when that person who's supposed to protect you does not protect you in one form or another. The other thing that can happen is you could develop them later in life when you have a loss of a person who's very close to you, who you have a really bonded friendship with, family member or just a friend. You just had that great bond with them, and that can cause abandonment issues, and it could occur anytime in life. As an older person, you can absolutely develop abandonment issues because of the fact that maybe your kids have put you in a home and they never come visit. Maybe because you don't have control of your finances anymore and you don't know exactly where you stand. All of those things can cause abandonment issues. What is important is that we absolutely understand that they are not a medical issue. They're absolutely not. Okay. An emotional issue that is brought on by somebody else's leaving or failure to protect or something like that. Like I said, most of the time these issues develop in childhood, and this is because as a child we require a physical and psychological connection between our parents and us or whoever our caregiver is. And these things, if they don't occur, then we develop these I'm sorry, let me go back. My brain just totally flew out the window. um as a child, you need both physical and psychological support from your parental figure, whoever that may be. When they fail to provide that kind of safety or that kind of support, you start to develop habits or not habits, yeah, habits that will protect you from the neglect. Okay, that is what actually interferes with the healthy brain, developing a healthy brain function as far as social interactions are concerned. So we'll never be able to quite like get it with our future partners, our future friends, whatever. We're always going to have these issues. Um, so when I said back, it's not a medical concern. It is not actually a medical concern. Although the brain's architect is genetic, it absolutely that's we get it from our parents, the kind of thing. But is the exposure or lack of exposure to things that build up these barriers that we put in front of ourselves to so we can somehow like cope with the loss of that support that we're supposed to get when we are children. And there's where we come into our trouble, because we will have difficulty connecting on a social level with anyone. Hopefully that makes sense. When we're talking about like the causes of separation or abandonment issues, there is so many. You could talk about there's residual pressure from your parents to be perfect. They want their perfect little darling. And when you don't perform, they berate you. Okay. There is also like physical abandonment. They left, never came back. That in itself will make an abandonment issue become apparent. We also have the emotional abandonment, like, you have somebody who's there, but not emotionally there for you, because it is a known fact and scientifically backed up that children need to be touched and to be loved and to be held as babies. And this helps them develop that part of their brain where they can connect with other people on a social level. Like, for example, I have a couple nephews who they said had fetal alcohol syndrome. And in looking back on some of the things that goes on with them, I'm like, yeah, you have fetal alcohol syndrome, right? But you also have abandonment issues, because my second nephew did not get picked up at all. When my other brother adopted him, he had a flat spot on the back of his head because of the lack of being picked up. He was left to lay in his crib for hours on end. And that in itself, I mean, that's physical abandonment, because they did not meet his needs, but then they didn't meet his emotional needs either, because he would cry and carry on and nobody would come and relieve him or soothe him. And that created a lot of problems in his life. And it's still creating problems in his life, because frankly, he's not getting the help that he needs. So when we're talking about abandonment issues, we have to really break it down. And the first thing we need to do is we need to break it out into types. The first type is avoidance, an avoidant type of abandonment issues. And it will manifest itself as someone who absolutely avoids any type of friendship or relationship. They back off from any type of commitment with another person. And we're not talking about an introvert. We're talking to an extreme where we're talking about people not only not having, but actually sabotaging or completely just avoiding any type of human interaction, because they don't know what to do. And they start to reel in those feelings that they had when they were younger, and they feel like they're not going to do well enough. The other type is anxious. When you have the anxious abandonment issues, you really do. You become, you kind of start navigating towards a codependent relationship, because you need to have that person be dependent on you, but you are dependent on that person as well. So it has to be it makes you the most comfortable when you have a codependent relationship. The third kind is called disorganized. And this actually is one that I have a little bit trouble understanding. So if I get this wrong, please, please, please let me know. But these people who have it's a good thing I can talk, huh? Have disorganized abandonment issues, will remain in toxic relationships for far too long, because they honestly believe that they do not have any type of any reason why would they deserve better. There's no reason for me to deserve better. So that's what they start to think. They stay with the toxic person or the abusive person longer, because they don't honestly feel like they deserve any better. So we're talking about abandonment issues. The next thing we need to do is we need to go into the signs and symptoms. And boy, oh boy, I bet you this raises some flags for some of my viewers, because it raised them for me. People with abandonment issues tend to give way too much of themselves. They will be like 100% in at the slightest notion that there might be could be something there. So they really give way too much of themselves. They also have problems with jealousy. They just cannot possibly believe that their partner or their friend is telling them the truth, because no one in their life has been that honest with them and the given them the basis of a trusting relationship. They have problems trusting their spouses or their friends. The spouse can say, "Hey, baby, I'm not cheating on you. I'm not doing any of this stuff," and the person on the inside with the abandonment issues can go, "Yeah, right." Because no matter how much you start talking about, you start expressing these feelings or what have you, unless you work on the cause and you start going to therapy to work through that cause, then it absolutely will not get any better. They have problems with feeling like they're inadequate in a relationship, like no matter what you're doing, and you could be saying, "I'm giving my 100%, I'm giving my very best," but it still doesn't feel like it's enough because your partner might somehow, some way be unhappy. They also need to be in control of or be controlled by a relationship. So, like when we're talking about this particular one, this one is absolutely bordering on abuse, because they either need to control every single aspect of a relationship, okay, every single aspect, or they need to be controlled by their partner and every single access, yeah, to be controlled by their partner in every single part of their relationship, because they don't know what's healthy. They don't know where to go with what they're feeling. And they may not really like being controlled or controlling everything, because it also it also leads itself to codependency. So the minute you get the partner under your thumb and you're like, "Oh, this is the way I like it," and then you're like, I'm bored, I'm done. That's that codependency thought process. So you have to, again, you're not going to cure any of this stuff cure or work through. You absolutely have to work through these issues with a therapist in order to um rise above them. You can also do people with abandonment issues settle for less than they deserve. They settle for somebody who is abusive, narcissistic. I'm so glad I can say that word. Narcissistic. They settle for someone who may not be quite right, but they're going to settle because in their mind, that's the very best that they can do. And that tends to be a whole lot of problem there, because we're not only bringing ourselves into this picture, we're bringing another person into the picture, whether you're going to be settling for yourself, but then that person, you end up hurting them because you can't truly give everything you have to the relationship, and you can't truly love them the way that they deserve to be loved, and the way that so in return, you're not going to get the kind of love that you deserve. The really big thing that I totally and completely identify with is people pleasing. I am a huge people pleaser. I will do anything and everything that I can to please other people, even if it means to the detriment of myself or my family. And that's something I've had to work on for a very long time. Like I work my 5 days a week, and they're like, "Oh, we have some overtime." I'm like, "I'm not really doing anything. I just go ahead and help out because other people need me." Well, in actuality, my family needed me, and I needed to stay home and take care of my family. And that's something that I had a very hard time dealing with, because I did not understand that pleasing my family and taking care of those people that were important to me and pleasing the common stranger, it was not the same thing. For me, it seemed like the exact same thing, because I didn't understand the concept of someone loving me without what's the word I want? Without standards that I have to maintain, or without any type of agenda. They absolutely would. That was something that I had to deal with. So when we're talking about treatments, the first first and foremost, you guys, and this is the hardest part of this treatment, is that we have to understand what the triggers are. And that takes a good, long, hard look into your past, and it sucks. It just flat out sucks. Because for me, I looked back into my past, and it wasn't until after my parents got divorced and then I got much older that I started to put together some things. My father was held accountable for a long time for this. I felt like he didn't fight for me in the custody battle. I felt like he just gave me up. Well, in actuality, my father truly did believe that his two daughters needed to be together. Because initially I was with my dad and my sister Annie was with my mom. And he came to realize that is not a healthy situation for either one of us. We need each other. More than anything, we needed each other. And that actually laid the groundwork for the best sibling relationship I've got. She's like my best friend. We did everything together. When we got scared, we're like, we need each other, and we would be together. And we couldn't depend on my mother. So that was what we depended on, was each other. Now, when we hit to my mother, there's a whole host of things that we could talk about. I'm going to hit them as briefly as I can. But number one, my mom was an alcoholic, a raging alcoholic. So I always felt like I was second to her next drink or second to her next hit or whatever the heck it was. I always felt the need to stand up for my little sister because my mom, for some reason, thought that I was better than my little sister. And my little sister is probably the most, she is. She's the most amazing human being ever. And I don't know how anybody could think she's less than that, but she is. She's amazing. And my mom did not give her the value that she deserves. So I felt like I had to give her that value because I was the older sibling. My mom was also incredibly selfish, incredibly. She abandoned us emotionally. We couldn't go to her and talk to her because she was too busy drinking or out with her buddies or whatever the case may be. Even when she got sober, she was too busy going to her meetings and checking on herself. And I understand you have to do that when you get sober, but you also have to understand that you have children and you need to be there for those children. There were times when we didn't have anything to eat. I mean, we would have, honestly, you guys are going to laugh so hard or you're going to be upset. I don't know which one, but we thought a cracker sandwich, that's right, bread, mayonnaise, and crackers, was a luxury. We thought that was a luxury when we were growing up. And I know that's sad, and I don't tell you guys this to feel sorry for me. I just tell you this so you can get an idea of the amount of neglect that can happen in a childhood. My mother was also physically abusive. There are memories that my sister has of being hit across the face with a belt buckle just because she wasn't me, which is not cool at all. We all know that. It's not cool. But can you see, like, what I'm laying a pattern down is that my mother was very, very selfish. She did whatever she needed to do for herself, and she forgot the fact that she had kids. So it's no wonder that we have abandonment issues and that both of us have spent a good part of 20, 25 years in therapy trying to deal with these issues. Now, when we talk about that kind of stuff, when we're looking at our parents and all of that stuff, the other thing you have to realize is that divorce of parents is very, very, very hard on the children. And that's something that people do not take into account when they're getting divorced. Because my parents got divorced. My dad lived in Montana. My mom lived in California. And we were told, honestly, honest to God, you guys, I was 7. My sister was 5. We were told, choose who you want to live with. Choose. I was 7. The most important thing that I could think of is like, are there cartoons on every day? And if there are, I'm going to live with her because there are cartoons on every day in California. That is what I was told. That is what I was told. And I felt guilty forever because I will never forget the look on my father's face when I said, well, there are cartoons on every day. And to a 7-year-old, that's important criteria. Okay. And nothing to do with love for my father or love for my mother or anything. It was all based on something that somebody had told me. So I then developed issues with my older sister for that reason. I have abandonment issues with her because she was there. She could have taken care of us. She could have stepped in and she chose not to. So I have an older sister who is 7 years my senior, and we don't have a relationship at all for that reason. I can't, because every time I look at her, I just see how much she abandoned us, and like then how much I took care of my younger sister. And I'm like, why didn't you care about me? Why wasn't I good enough to get an older sibling to care for me? So once we have identified where these issues come from, we have to then, as in all things, we have to find a therapist. You have to find a therapist. Now, you guys, you have to be picky and find a therapist that you are comfortable with. It doesn't do you any good if you go in and you have a male therapist and you're uncomfortable with a male therapist because you have daddy issues from his behavior. That doesn't do you any good. Be open, be honest, and remember, this is super important, you guys. Remember that they work for you, not the other way around. Okay? Therapists work for you to help you through your issues. You don't work for them. Okay? So if you need a female therapist or a male therapist, whatever the case may be, if you need someone who is not huge, like big in stature, ask for it. If you need somebody who is willing to just talk online because going to their office is too much, ask for it. You have to be your own biggest advocate at this point. And I know that's so hard, you guys. It's so hard to be an advocate for yourself because it hurts to have to stop and think, okay, what would I have done had I had all the support I had? I didn't have. So like I would be like, okay, well, I don't want a male therapist. It's not because I have daddy issues. It's because I have ex-husband issues. I have to have a female therapist. Otherwise, I am never going to be comfortable enough to talk. And to admit that started a whole nother line of therapy that I needed to discuss. So I think being honest with yourself and really stating what you need is super important when we're talking about getting a therapist. Okay, the next stop on helping yourself is self-care. Now, I know self-care is something that everybody throws across the board all the time now, but I'm talking about self-care down to the smallest thing. If you wake up and you're like, oh God, this day is just going to be too much, and you feel completely overwhelmed, okay? And you throw that blanket back over your head and you're like, I'm taking 10 minutes to feel better. That is self-care because you're giving yourself 10 minutes to reset, recharge, and maybe be able to face the day. Self-care could also be, I'm going to take a bath. I'm going to ask my partner to care for any children that are here. And I'm going to sit in the bath for 20 or 30 minutes with the music on, candles going, and just relax. That is self-care. Okay. When we're talking about like bigger things, like I tend to do this because I struggle with my weight. I'm like, well, I don't want to stop and have any sugar, because I tend to be overweight. I don't want to eat the junk food. But there are days when a piece of chocolate would make my life so much better. And I need to acknowledge that and say, even though it's not in your plan, today you could have that piece of chocolate. You just can't have 7 pieces of chocolate. You could have that one piece to give yourself that little push and that satisfaction of tasting the chocolate, but you just can't have 7 of them. So you have to find the fine line there. And self-care can be something as easy as going out and buying yourself some new underwear or socks. If you need it and it's within your means, go buy that stuff for yourself, because no one else is going to take care of you the way that you take care of you. You're going to know the ins and outs of your insecurities and where these things came from, and you can see the inner workings. You can feel the inner workings of yourself, and you can treat yourself well. And it's important that we realize how much we need self-care. How much? Okay. Just because today I worked only like 2.5 hours because my client was having some issues today. Okay. That doesn't make me any less worthy of the after dinner drink, the after work drink. No, what it makes me actually is more worthy of it because I dealt with a very stressed out, very on the edge, overstimulated autistic client, and I didn't lose my cool. I was able to sit on the floor with him and we drew silly pictures to make him calm down. For that, I deserve an even bigger reward. And that's something that I would only know about myself. So you have to be aware of, don't just beat yourself up and berate yourself, because that's something I'm also very good at. Um, really look at your days and reward yourself where you can be rewarded. Like for example, today is like, I don't know, it's like 100 degrees here in Oregon, and normally I wear pants and a shirt because I deal with autistic youth and we never know what's going to happen. I'm like, I know this client pretty well. I'm going to wear a dress, and it's one of my favorite dresses, but I've never worn it to a meeting. And the thing is like when I got there and I'm like, okay, I feel so much better. I'm not so hot. I'm not so uncomfortable because and then when I went to go leave, my client grabbed a hold of my dress and was touching it. I'm like, oh, you want to feel it? Because it's got like different textures and stuff like that. And he spent another 20 minutes feeling the textures in my dress. So because I allowed myself to do what I was feeling, which is to wear a dress, then I absolutely allowed myself to help my client more, which again rolls back to me and makes me feel more fulfilled. So I hope you guys understand exactly what I'm talking about, because I have to work really hard to find those connections in my life. I really do. And I'm hoping that by putting this out there that some of you guys will be able to find those connections yourself and realize, you know what, I am not doing half as bad as I thought I was. Give yourself a break and appreciate yourself and give yourself the self-care. Okay, so the next thing that we need to talk about is support and resources. So when I'm talking about support and resources, support is the support of your family and friends. Very difficult sometimes when we're talking about abandonment issues, because for me, it is my parents and it is my oldest sister. So I also have some abandonment issues with the fact that my older brother was killed when we were 28, and he was our protector. He protected us against everything that the world could bring to us. And when he left, I felt truly alone. Like I felt like I had to step up and be that protector, even though I feel like I'm ill-equipped to be that protector. So I have those issues, and so I can't really talk to my stepmom and my dad about it. I don't talk to my mother or my older sister. So like that leads me to talking to my younger sister, who I have a problem with talking to her because I've always been her protector. So it leads me to like, okay, do I talk to my husband? Do I talk to my friends? And thank gosh, I found this group of friends, and most of you are listening to me right now, that supports me unconditionally. As long as I'm not acting like a dick, I get unconditional support. They're like, Deb, what do you need? Deb, what can we do for you to support you, to make you feel like you are secure in your place in our community? And for me, that is, I can't even put into words how incredibly important that is to me, to have another human being say, hey, we got you. We got you. Don't worry about it. You're an awesome person. What you're putting out there is good stuff, and we want to support you in that. So that's where I found my support. What can I recommend for people who are going through this? You know what? Even if it's not a group of people, and I'll tell you, when I started, I was online with these people. That's it. I didn't have any connection with them as far as like physically connected. It was all online. I started this beautiful, wonderful friendship with these people, and it was all online. I still haven't met half of them. I've only met like 4 or 5 of them. And it was just so amazing that people would be like, oh yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Oh, Deb, we listened to your channel. It hit points with us, and we want to, we want to make sure we support you. So what I'm saying, why I'm saying this is, like, even if you have to start online, find some people to talk to. There are many mental health groups out there that you can talk to and go in and talk to people who have like concerns, and you can get the kind of support that you need. And if you don't get that, you can't find that, then you're free to email me, hit me up, and I will be your support system, because it is that important. That's in order to go forth and start to resolve these abandonment issues, we absolutely have to have support. Okay, no matter in what form, you have to find it. Yeah, yes, Beck, you're right. I was just reading the chat, and Uncle Beck says, find yourself a Becca and a Ben. And that is absolutely 100%. They have been my biggest supporters. Even when I didn't think that I was good enough to do this, they have supported me and made me realize that I am good enough to do this. So the next thing we need to recognize is that when we have these abandonment issues, although the abandonment issues, although your abandonment issues are not a mental health disorder, they can very much lead to mental health disorders. And that's a harsh reality. It is so scary to think that you may not be genetically predisposed for these things, but because of the upbringing, or the lack of upbringing, or the trauma, that you can be predisposed to these things. And that scares the crap out of me, because I have bad enough genetics. I don't need any help in that department. So the first thing that we can talk about being, it can cause, and now I might need student Dr. Ben to chime in on these ones, because there's a couple of them I'm not sure how they cause it, but it'll be interesting to see. The first thing they can cause is depression and anxiety. And that's kind of a no-brainer. Like, if you don't feel like you're worthy of even your parents' love, of course that's going to make you feel depressed. Of course it's going to give you anxiety. And any situation that you are like, oh, I like this person, or I might possibly love this person, you start thinking about the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally not loving you and not meeting your needs. You're going to be like, maybe I shouldn't say anything. Or maybe I should go into the relationship trying to find a person who will love me, but yet twisting it into something that is toxic or codependent, because no other way. It can obviously I'm so glad that I can freaking talk. It can lead to personality disorders, and that's an extreme case, of course. But when you don't feel worthy enough, and you feel unloved, and you start to feel that self-hatred, and God forbid, but if there's abuse in those relationships, where they're like physical abuse or sexual abuse, you have to have a place that's safe. And for people with this personality disorders, the safe place is somewhere else, and letting another personality take over and be the shield for you to be the shield, so that the real you can be protected. The true core personality could be protected against all those evil and nasty things that are happening to you. Of course, now we also have to deal with suicide. People who have abandonment issues are almost 2 times more likely to commit suicide, because again, it goes back to the core of the abandonment issues, which is that you are not good enough for the people who should have loved you unconditionally and protected you unconditionally, but you weren't good enough. And that's a big thing that you'll find. I'll actually touch on that after I'm done with this one. It can also lead to when you're a child, you can actually have delayed development because of this. And that goes back to the child needing physical and psychological care and protection. They need to learn how to interact with a person. They need to learn how to interact with society. And they can't do that if they don't have the protection and the love and the support of their parents, or whoever their parental figure is. I mean, you can go back and look at the scientific studies that if a child is not talked to in the first, like, I think it's like 5 years of their life, they're going to lose the ability to speak or speak in a way that we consider normal because they weren't exposed to it. So you put that logic and put it on the fact that you are not emotionally developing, you don't feel protected, you don't know how to interact with other people because you didn't have the interaction that you needed with your parents. And it kind of goes along, and it makes sense why people would have developmental delays, because they weren't taught how to or shown the way to develop those things. So the next couple of ones are ones that maybe student Dr. Ben can chime in, or maybe he can talk about on another show. We're talking about developing chronic health issues. And let me roll back. I'm sorry. The next one I'm going to talk about is actually obesity. So, and this makes total sense to me too, because I'm a big gal, is that if you can't find love in the people around you, the people who are supposed to love you and protect you, you find your comfort in food, or you find your comfort in alcohol or drugs. So, like, I'm going to lump obesity in with addiction behaviors, because you become addicted to the happiness that you feel when you eat, and that gives you a sense of being okay and being protected and being loved. Same thing with the drugs. It makes it so you forget about it for a little while and you feel somewhat normal. Same thing with alcohol. You drink until you don't have to focus on what's right there. You want to go somewhere else. And that's what those things do to you. So addiction behavior absolutely can play a huge role in someone who has abandonment issues. And it is taught, you're just learning from the people who raised you. They abandoned you, they left you alone to try to figure everything out. Well, you're more comfortable alone, so now you're going to find comfort in the things that cannot love you back, because you're better off alone. That's the way things are going in your mind. I find comfort in food because don't I had an issue with where we didn't even get enough to eat. So that's an issue with me. Like, I try to eat more than I should because I'm afraid of where my next meal would come from. And that's something, it's a habit that I develop over a lifetime. And it's something that I'm working out in my 50s, but it took a long time for me to get to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't have to hide food that I can come back to later. I don't have to like eat everything in sight for fear I won't get another meal. So those kind of things really do affect the way that you grow up and the way that you deal with things. So back to student Dr. Ben, if he's still here. There are chronic health issues that can develop because of habits that we have developed as a result of abandonment issues. Talking about diabetes, heart disease, and autoimmune disorders. Of course, the diabetes and the heart issues, we can always find a genetic marker there. If you're predisposition for it genetically, then there's a better chance to develop it. However, if you have these abandonment issues on top of it, you're not taking care of yourself, you're eating uncontrollably, you have addictions like drugs and alcohol, all of those things are going to contribute to the diabetes and the heart disease, all of those things. Now, the one where I struggle a little bit to find out where we're at or how to approach this scientifically is autoimmune disorders. Now, I believe, and please, anyone who can correct me, please do, but I believe this happens because we have an overreaction to things that are normal, but not normal to us. We have this overreaction, and our body goes into fight or flight mode. And once that happens, we're going to start having immunological responses where your immune system's going to go crazy. For me, I developed severe allergies to the point where, like, I was on a ventilator for 4 days, had to be given medication. I was in the hospital to latex. And that took away my identity because I was a paramedic, and I was very proud of that. And that was where I actually found a whole lot of contentment and a whole lot of peace in my life. But yet when I started having those allergic reactions, things just, my immune system went absolutely nuts. And it was like this for years and years and years. I'm talking probably about 7 or 8 years easily that it was like this every other day. I was having an allergic reaction, if not twice or 3 times a day, depending on what kind of meds I could get in to my system. And the thing is also that when I developed my autoimmune disorder, and I didn't develop it until I was 50, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And that was one of the questions the rheumatologist asked me is like, do you have PTSD? I said, yes. Do you have severe allergies? I said, yes. He says, well, they've been scientifically linked to causing, I was predisposed to rheumatoid arthritis anyway, but I weakened everything by the other things that were happening in my life. And it actually allowed it to progress to a point where I developed it a lot sooner than I would have normally, or I might not have ever developed rheumatoid arthritis because if I had not had the PTSD and the severe allergic reactions and all of that. And that is something that, like, I'm in shock. I was in total shock about. He's like, well, you definitely have rheumatoid arthritis in your feet, your ankles, and your hips. I'm like, and my hands. I'm like, for cracking ice, what about my back? I have horrible back pain, right? He's like, oh, no, you don't have rheumatoid arthritis in your back. You have OA in your back, which is like I can never say it right. So I have arthritis throughout my entire body. It's just a matter of what kind is affecting. And the fact that when I went to my therapist and I said, holy crap, this is what's happening. They're like, okay, let's work it all back. And I could work it all back. And I understand how my emotional abandonment by my mother and my physical abandonment by my mother have caused these issues. And people like to say, how was that possible? How can you associate something that happened when you were so little you barely remember it to a problem that you have today? Quit it. It's not linked. No, it is linked. It absolutely 100% is linked. Absolutely. The other thing, like, I have, you guys, that I have chronic dental problems. And I'm not saying this to make you guys feel sorry for me. I just want you to know that thank you, back osteoarthritis. That it happens. It happens. I have so many broken teeth in my mouth right now. And it comes from the fact that one sec, that I was pretty severely malnourished as a child. We could be given this amount of food and it was not enough to keep one person going. It just wasn't. And more times than not, my younger sister would say, I'm hungry still, Deb. And I would give it to her because I didn't want her to feel abandoned and alone. And I knew she did anyway because of my mother, but I wasn't going to do that to her. So you could see why things that happen in your past, so far in your past, they link up and they make a difference in your physical health. So when we're talking about that and you're ready to do this leap or this conversation with the people who have abandoned you, first off, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, don't waste your time. And the reason being is that they will never take responsibility for their actions. Never. They will turn it on you and say, well, if you had, or you did, or whatever, or it was because of this or because of that. No, it was because you were a shitty parent. That's what the whole point of it is. If you had been a decent parent, then you would have let me go live with my dad, where I could have been loved by my grandparents just all the time. But you couldn't do that because you would be left without your welfare money. Woo! I am airing some dirty laundry here, y'all. Sorry. I did have a rough childhood. So what I suggest you do is that I suggest that you write a letter and you tell them everything that you want to tell them. And you put those feelings down on paper, because somehow putting those feelings down on paper really makes you feel like you're putting it, like it's um like it gives it validation because you put it down on paper. And I did send one to my mother. I did. And the result of that is that she called my sister and said, "Why is your why is your sister lying about me? Why is your sister making up these lies?" And my younger sister's like, "She's not making up lies, Mom. You were a horrible parent. You had no business having us. We should have been with our dad," which is what should have happened, but it didn't. And then my little sister got into a fight with my mom, and my mom and her didn't speak to her for a while. I'm like, "Annie, don't do that. Just let me take the brunt. Just let me take the hatred of this parent, because she already hates me." So, she likes to use me when she can, but she freaking hates me overall. But I burnt that letter, and I burnt it, and I tried to let go of all of the crap that she has there, all the shit that she piled on me. And, like, what do you do? Like, how do you release that? And I released it in so many different ways. Like, one of the biggest things, like, and I overcompensated. My abandonment issues made me overcompensate with my children. My children never wanted for a single thing in this world, not ever. They got everything they wanted. And I gave them all of that because I was so afraid to be what my mom was, to the point that I took away from my own self. I would go hungry before my children ever knew that we were poor. Okay. I would be sick as a dog before my kids ever knew that we didn't have enough money to go to the doctor. And I overcompensated for that. I gave my children everything, but I also made them a little bit entitled because of it. And they've learned now as adults, wow, mom's life sucked as a child. And she protected us from so much, because I never told them that my mom was this horrible person, and she's a horrible person. But I let them have a grandma experience because I'm not a horrible person. So when you start healing from these abandonment issues, you're going to find that you're better able to connect, better able to understand what happens, and you're actually able to live a better life for yourself. And that was the big thing for me, is that I absolutely 100% had to understand that what I'm doing in my life is a better life than what I had. I have achieved so much more. I've done so much more. I've rose above my abandonment issues. And is it possible? Yes, it's absolutely possible. Does it take years and years of work? Yes, it absolutely does. But I'm telling you right now, it is worth every step of the way. Because at one point in time, you're going to be able to look back, and you're going to be able to look at your childhood and go, fuck, that sucked. But look at my children. My children didn't have that. My children had a totally different childhood experience than what I had. And that means I rose above. I rose above, and I maybe overcompensated, but I rose above, and my children never felt abandoned. Not ever. My husband has never felt abandoned by me. Okay. My friends don't feel abandoned by me. I'm now in a place where I can ask those friends and ask my husband, I need to feel more support. Today is a very rough day, and I need you to come in, and I need you to just pick me up today. Today, I need you to be the strong one of our relationship, because I don't have it in me to be strong today. And that is a good thing, you guys. When you can recognize what you need and go to the people around you in your support group, which we talked about, and say, I need a little bit more today. I need some help today, because today my mental health issues are getting they're getting the best of me, and I don't want to slide back, and I don't want to be in a place where I used to be. So please, can you lift me up? Can you support my weight today? Because I can only hold about 40% of it. And that's why support systems are so important. Okay? I have some of the best friends I've ever had in my life today. I get sad because I miss my best friend. She was my best friend for 22 years. She died 5 years ago. I miss that girl so very much. But the friends I have today have shown me that I don't have to settle for anything. I can expect the best of people and I can support them, and they will in return support me and they will give me the best of them. I don't have to settle for second or third best just because I'm lonely. Okay. That's part of that self-care system is like, yeah, I'm lonely. I miss my friend Shannon so much every day. Every day starts with an ache. Okay. But now I'm blessed enough to have Ben, I have Beck, I have BB, I have all these people in my HR, I have all these people in my life that are like, hey, are you okay today? Can we help you in any way? What can we do for you? And that's not something I ever thought that I would ever see out of a community again once I lost her. So know you're absolutely right. You have to find the right group for you. And I was very lucky that I found the right group on my first attempt online stuff. I did some online stuff earlier, but I don't call it an attempt because it just weirded me out. But I was really, really lucky to find them. And I love you too, BB. So yeah, now that I've ranted and raved for almost an hour, I hope that I've educated you guys on abandonment issues, and I'm sure that you know way more about my personal life than you really wanted to. But that's the whole point of my channel, is that I put my personal experiences out there. So when people go, oh shit, she really does know what she's talking about and she could really support me. That's the whole point of it. I want people to come on and say things and bring up issues that we can all relate to. And it's very important that we as a community support each other. Is anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns that we should hit up? Did I really talk that well that you guys have no questions? I'm kind of excited about that. Oh, here we go. You're right, BB. I did feel better when I spoke on it. Even just at the beginning when I said I had a rough weekend with a former friend. I actually do feel better having said it. It's not as bottled up, and that makes it easier to deal with. Farron, I don't know that I want to compare childhoods, but yes, it sucked, and I hope that you are finding healing through work, through therapy, all that from your childhood. And just remember, you know what? You're valued, and I think that's the one thing that I can say to everybody: you are valued. Oh my gosh, Randolph, thank you. We have to be valued. We have to value ourselves first, because we can't expect other people to value us unless we give ourselves some value. No, that's not true. People should value you. And I take that back. People should value you, but you won't get the kind of value that you deserve until you realize that you deserve it. If that makes sense. HR, thank you so much for the hearts. I really appreciate it. Next week, you guys, let's see. Next week is the 18th. I don't have anything going on. I don't have a topic at all chosen for the 18th. So please, if you have any ideas, please send them in. I'll be happy to tackle anything. The 25th, I have my first co-host. I'm so excited. HR is going to be on my show with me, and we're going to talk about the now I forgot the word. Let's see. The stigmas that go along with having mental health disorders. Like my particular just favorite is when you're in the middle of an argument and they're like, are you off your meds? Did you once for 1 second think that maybe I'm still taking my meds? You're just an asshole. Or, I don't know, we're fighting. This is probably not the best time where I'm going to be the most receptive about taking my meds. Just a thought. So we're going to talk about that kind of stuff on the 25th. And then on August 1st, I'm super excited. Oz and Jen will be on my show. We'll be talking about dealing with grief once you've stepped away from the church and how you deal with that grieving process. So please, 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 you guys, if you have any ideas, hit me up. It's DebbieSue70@gmail.com. I will answer any and all emails that I get. So I think at this point, I think I might be done unless anybody else has anything to say or comment or send me pictures. No? So I'm going to try really hard to quote this quote that I have, but I always forget it. I do believe it is something by Aristotle. There it is. So knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Because once you know yourself, you love and accept yourself, you know that you should not settle for anything less. And that's an absolute truth. So please take care of yourselves. Okay. Be kind to yourselves. Absolutely be kind to yourselves. And remember, you're perfect just the way you are.